gala halla murder. Sanko licky love upon the dam and the gala halla murder.
Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko kissy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko kissy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come.
Sanko chase the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko chase the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder.
Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko catchy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko catchy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come.
Sanko squeeze the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko squeeze the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder.
Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko left the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko left the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko boy,
You better run.
Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come. Sanko,
You better run.
Sanko,
Police have come.
Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come.
Sanko licky love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko licky love upon the dam and the gala halla murder.
Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko kissy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko kissy love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Police are come and the gala halla murder. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come.
Sanko chase the love upon the dam and the gala halla murder. Sanko chase the love upon the dam and the gala halla
If you are looking to
murder.
have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Aleister Collins firm, located at the Kellyan Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Aleister Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Aleister Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Aleister Collins firm. Contact them at Aleister Collins firm.
Mr. Watts, he is armed himself shots. Shots, watch it, tear gas. Live rounds. Also, I can see that.
But since my cousin there, you know you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? You know you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me now.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening to
Right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up to talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, then we want to see nobody for justice. You see? I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice for my family.
I got visitors all of a sudden. All of a sudden, This is Joker.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, police are come. Sanko boy, you better run. Sanko boy, policeman are come.
Sanko licky love up on the dam and the gala holla murder. Sanko licky love up on the dam and the gala holla murder.
Police are come and the gala holla murder. Police are come and the gala holla murder.
All right, hey, guess what? Good evening. Let's get straight down to business. And right off the bat, hope you guys have had a great week. It's already Wednesday. It's midweek. It's almost the ending of September. Some people say September. Those of you who would know that would know exactly what I'm talking about because Guyana is so special. There are people who speak attempt to speak the Queen's language, and they say September. You know who those individuals are. Some of us went to school with them. They're always proper. You know, they eat with forks and spoons and whatever. They try to be very proper, especially in public. And so they don't say how some of us pronounce this month, actually. So some say September, like if they is so proper. Good evening. This is September 19th. And all manner of things, right? And then they get some September, right? And then they get some September. September. Let me see if you guys know Guyana whilst we prepare for our show. Which part of Guyana people say September? Hey, woman this way. It's a September way. I'll be doing September. All right, it's not poking fun of any particular group of people in Guyana? Absolutely not, because I'm I spent almost all my childhood years on the quarantine, so I would know about those sort of things, right? September, sa, just like sati, say sati. Come on, if the people in Georgetown say sati. The people when they name Sati and they come to America, they name Sati or they change it to Sandra. Anyways, I'm just being a little bit funny here tonight. Would you guys accept that? Gosh, accept it a little, man. What is life without a little bit of sense of humor? Poking fun at each other, right? I don't mind when people poke fun of me. People say, hey, Mark, did you drop soap in jail? I'm like, no, I didn't. I actually dropped soap powder. Anyways, we're preparing for our guest this evening. And I noticed some of you guys want to have me, Turkia. If our operator can just remove this information. Well, by the way, it's the attorney. I usually say our in-house attorney, Washington law firm. You need an attorney. It's September. It's the month of September. Give her a call and tell her you have an issue, whether your landlord wants to kick you out of that basement or the attic, wherever you are, or in general, if somebody wants to kick you out, or if you have a tenant who's giving you a rough time and don't want to leave, there's always a way to remedy this. Or if you want a divorce, meaning divorce, a divorce, right? Or if you want to left somebody, just call up the lawyer. If you fell somewhere accidentally, not throw dunk yourself, or whatever it is, give the lawyer a call. All right. Thank you very much. Shellon Washington, Esquire, lawyer, out there in Brooklyn, New York. So get the number down quickly. Give her a call. Let's move on. What else we can do as we sit down to have a great show this evening? Elson Lowe is going to be with us shortly. But before we go to Elson Lowe, let's remind you of a few things that are still lingering in the minds of Guyanese. And it has nothing to do with this. Turkey, I'm not sure. Some of the guys in the opposition should know this, though, right? Especially those who are shadowing whoever they're shadowing and whatever representation they're making and so forth. Well, hey, they should know that Turkey has actually opted to change its name. But I tell you what, Turkey has not changed its name to Turkiya. Turkiya. There's no such thing, Turkiya. And so somebody has got to tell this Turkey. Well, you guys have to figure out which one really is the Turkey, right? That the correct pronunciation is Turkey. Turkey. Imagine, I am now teaching people English and how to pronounce things. Just imagine a little redhead guy from the quarantine that spoke Abi this and I this is now correcting people. But then again, when you have individuals who have attended the University of IFLAT, what is there to correct? Even a nursery school child, a pre-K child can correct these individuals. But then again, we have two things on the screen. It's up to you to decide which one is the Turkey and which one is Turkiya. All right, so since we get that out of the way, again, let me welcome all of you. Let me thank you guys for sharing the link. And whoever this Garfield Collins guy is, thank you so much, Garfield, for always every night asking people to share the link. Share the link. One of the things we don't do here on 107.1 FM, mind you, they are targeting 107.1 FM, and they're targeting the other radio stations and TV stations that are not really up with the corruption and the racism and this so-called fakeness of a one Guyana by this installed PPP regime, right? So I just want you guys to know, I'm not going to whisper it to you guys that they are targeting us. And I know why they're targeting us, but I will go at the meeting and I'll tell them specifically why they are targeting us. Again, I just let you guys know that they are attempting to put us under the pressure. We don't buckle. In fact, we get stronger under pressure, regardless of what. And so we are not going to buckle from the racist, the political move by some of those individuals in the PPP. So I just thought I mentioned to you guys quietly, and I'll get on the mountaintop and tell you guys why they are targeting us. Not because we owe them some crumbs, right? It is because they are deliberately targeting us. They're deliberately trying to stifle us. And so while they give hundreds of millions of dollars to NCN, to their friends and cronies and all other so-called fake media houses that they have created. And speaking of fake media houses being funded by questionable characters and so forth, I've noticed some members of the opposition rushing quickly to embrace those so-called fictitious fake media houses and so forth. I've been watching some of the folks in the opposition who are rushing to give these individuals some sort of credence, some sort of credibility. But come elections time, they're going to put some serious blows on these very individuals who are rushing over to embrace those paku, as we would say. But before we get to our guest, Elson Lowe, look at this. Isn't this ironic that they're saying Irfan Ali, that is Turkiya. Turkiya, right? And I hope Amanza Walton Desir is listening. Turkiya, because I'm sure by now she should know that it's Turkiya, right? And so good evening to Amanza Walton Desir. I hope she was following the this presentation at the United Nations. And we want to see whoever is shutting whoever is to follow these people and put them in check, not just Turkiya. Of course, I'm sure that Amanza should have known that it's Turkiya, right? And the name of Turkey was actually changed. But this is what this Turkiya got into the United Nations and spoke about this so-called equalities in Guyana, equalities, and that his administration is bridging the gap. I don't know what gap is he. Well, then again, Mark, it's only Wednesday, but I don't know what gap he's talking about. It couldn't be the department store. Lowe probably did some shopping when he was working over here because, you know, he had a big job. I could imagine he was shopping at places and getting his discount at the gap. But that is not the kind of gap that this guy, Turkiya, is talking about. Bridging the gap. What gap is he bridging? Again, close your eyes and only imagine what gap he might be referring to. I don't care. I don't know. And my mind is not in the gutter. Trust me. But this is what he is saying now. Let's move over. Irfan Ali says Sue is a carpetbagger. Just imagine. I wonder if Turkiya, Irfan Ali, was actually looking into the mirror when he was talking about this. He is calling Sue a carpetbagger. And he is saying that allegations have not affected country's image. How the hell does he know this? Not so long ago, this carpetbagger, Irfan Ali, said that he is calling for an investigation. There is no investigations thus far, none whatsoever, because they don't want an investigation. And of course, this is going to continue to affect the country, the image of the country, regardless of what this carpetbagger, whatever it is now, has to say. Anyways, we no longer say hallelujah. We will say hallelujah. We'll just change things around. And let us welcome our guest this evening, Mr. Elson, I was about to say Elton John. Do forgive me, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. That's a little bit far off. Elton John is a little bit far off from Elson Lowe. I would have to say that's not a little bit tall.
Exactly. My apologies for that. Gosh, can I withdraw that statement quick, that comparison? But Elton John is still a great entertainer, a great singer. And so don't take that as an insult at all. I wish I was Elton John in terms of the financial aspect of things. He's a rich man, a very, very rich man. Elson Lowe, welcome to Straight Up Again. You're no stranger. I'm not sure if you followed Irfan Ali's speech or so-called speech or talk in the United Nations. He spoke about equalities in Guyana and that his administration, they're bridging the gap. Bridging the gap, Mr. Lowe. What gap is he bridging? And what sort of equalities that this guy is talking about, sir? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would say, or at least one of the things that I think is really important and a question we really need to be asking ourselves as Guyanese right now is, has the government given any thought, do they have any interest in the extremely the rapid rise of inequality in Guyana? That is something that you pretty much never hear them talk about, inequality in the society. You never hear them really talk about it, talk about measures to address it, talk about anti-poverty measures, These aren't things that are really in the vocabulary of the government, I would say. And in fact, when they listed their development priorities earlier this year, they did not include combating inequality as one of their priorities when it comes to development. And so I think that from that perspective, you can see that that's not something that's on the government's radar. That, of course, would explain why you saw such a callous response to the cost of living crisis, where they just didn't allocate enough funds at the beginning of the year. And then when the crisis escalated and they went back to Parliament, allocated even less funds, pretty very, very little towards the cost of living crisis. And so that's the question of bridging the gap, bridging inequalities in Guyana is one I don't think the government is serious about confronting, and I don't think the government has made any kind of effort to confront. One of the things I try to sensitize viewers about is that as Guyana's economy grows, as the oil and gas economy becomes much more dominant, there's going to be areas of the economic space, assets, and so on that will go up substantially. You look at the Guyanese stock market, that's up 5 times over in only a few years. So for those people who own stock, which is typically wealthier people, they'll be 5 times as wealthy as they were only a few years ago. But the average person on the road, they don't own any stock. Sad to say, but the average person on the road doesn't own any stock, and so they're
You would think that they would actually pay attention, but to that, and I understand you have studied in your undergraduate years economics and so forth, and so you would pay keen attention to that. But with what's happening to the stocks and the stock market, that is, it doesn't mean to say that those who haven't studied economics and so forth or financial planning cannot study and get a better understanding of the stock market.
Absolutely.
But people, Mr. Lowe, people are concentrating on bread and butter in that country because it is rough. Before I give you that opportunity to explain to our listening audience how rough and what is it that you're hearing from the ordinary working class people there in Guyana, before you respond, sir, let us remind people how rough Guyana is.
Making the short video for send to you and the viewers and listeners. I'll know we punishing in Guyana. Punishing. Rice gone up, sugar gone up, flour gone up, cost of living just gone up, gas gone up from 3,400 to 3,800. Real hungry days under this installed PPP government. Real hungry days we gone back to. Guyanese, real hungry days,
All right, that was a while back. Things have gone way up again. And your take on what is happening in Guyana and the cost of living. And the installed PPP regime cannot control anything because they have no vision. Go ahead, sir.
Well, one of the things I want to help viewers to understand is that the reason that you're seeing assets like stocks and like housing go through the roof is because you're seeing very rapid economic growth from due to the oil and gas sector. So on the one hand, you have a lot of growth and you have a lot of revenue. In fact, the Bank of Guyana indicated that as much as almost 33% more oil revenue is what we got this year from the high oil price than expected. So there's lots of cash in the system, lots of cash available in the sovereign wealth fund. But on the other end of things, you've seen the cost of living go up. And one of the things that we pointed out at one of our press conferences is that if you look at Christmas 2020 and you look at Christmas 2022, you really should expect to see about a shift, a difference in prices of about 25%. So goods will be, the food in particular, about 25% more expensive between Christmas 2020 and Christmas 2022. That's the trend that we are on already. That's we've seen extensive levels of inflation last year. We've seen extensive levels of inflation in the first half of this year, in excess of 8% and so on. And as a result, we're heading to 2022 where people will be able to buy much less, 25% higher prices than they faced only a few years ago. But that is at the same time that the country is making much more money than expected because of the higher oil price. And so the government is really, I think, engaged on a cruel policy of refusing to put adequate funds towards cost of living, while at the same time having more money with which to help. It's really disturbing, and it's really absurd that we're in this environment. That can be the thinking that they're having, but that is what is going on. Because again, how can you have a national budget with got the turkey up there again? How can you have a national budget with less than 1% of it going towards cost of living mitigation when you know that we've already got a cost of living crisis on our hands? And how can you have the war in Ukraine happen and the prices go up even further? And when you get a chance to pass a supplemental to address the cost of living issue, you put almost nothing in that supplemental for cost of living. Pretty much nothing in there. And so those are, I think, very concerning, very alarming trends that we've seen with the government. And to my mind, if you have more revenue and you refuse to help during these times, it seems to me that you're not particularly interested in helping people. And so we've got, on the one hand, rising inequality, just because some people are making money and others not. And on the other hand, a rise in the cost of living that is spreading, that is increasing the gap between the rich and poor very substantially. That is what is going on. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to increase because the government refuses to address inequality and refuses to address cost of living issues. I think ultimately you got to get the balance right in terms of your investment in capital and other areas versus your investment in people, especially during a crisis. And that is not what we've seen. We've not seen any level of investment. The government cannot continue to put forward this yarn that they're doing enough. Everybody knows that we're now producing oil. We've got significant oil production in excess of 350,000, I believe it's 370,000 barrels of oil a day. So a huge amount. Trinidad's highest ever is, I think, 280,000 barrels of oil a day. So far higher than Trinidad's highest ever. And you've got a high oil price. And it's higher than you had anticipated. So all of these factors, I think, are coming together to indicate that we should be able to help Guyanese. We should be able to help people deal with the cost of living crisis. People should not be going hungry and things tight. But that's a deliberate choice by the government. And, I'll put it in another way that I think helps to make this thing concrete. Can you imagine, Mark, that at the beginning of this year, you had a tripartite committee agree to raise the minimum wage from 44,200, paltry 44,000 minimum wage, to 60,000, which is still not good. This committee comprised the government, trade unions, and businesses. Approved this higher minimum wage. And it took nearly 6 months for the government to actually implement the higher minimum wage. During that 6 months, you had the war in Ukraine and you had prices go through the roof. So during that particular period, when people most needed to get additional funds, they were dragging their feet on it. I think that is just a perfect example of the way that the government is really has really demonstrated that it doesn't have any interest in citizens when it comes to their day-to-day.
This is why, Mr. Lowe, you're seeing some of the comments, and people have a better understanding as to what's happening in Guyana. With more and more of these shows and folks like you coming out to really talk and expose what is happening. I commend you guys for the bravery, the few of you who are coming out often to speak out on a variety of issues. I noticed one person, Lynette Nelson, a fan, ardent supporter here of us at 107.1, and I'm sure other programs that speak the truth, not propaganda program. And she's saying here, wicked PPP. Speaking of wicked PPP, we see that they're still doling out hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars in the sugar industry, knowing that it's dying. They're doling out, so to speak, hundreds of millions of dollars in the fishing industry, but they're not going to Linden to talk with bauxite workers and give out hundreds of millions of dollars to the bauxite workers or to public servants and so forth. But yet these are the folks like Irfan Ali, who sits at the United Nations and feel comfortable talking about bridging the gap in terms of equalities and so forth, and the racial gap and all manner of gaps he's talking about. But the evidence is quite obvious. It's the opposite. What is it that you guys in the opposition? I know you're a advisor on economics to the leader of the opposition. What specifically are you guys doing to counter what these folks are doing in the install regime to discriminate against the majority of Guyanese? And we know most of those Guyanese who are being discriminated against are persons of African descent. What exactly are you guys doing to counter that in the opposition?
Well, the first thing that I would mention is that the very last press conference, Lead the Opposition highlighted instances of discrimination when folks were not able to access the same resources as individuals in other areas, and the real concern that brings out, I think it should bring out in every Guyanese, that you're seeing this kind of arbitrary by the government division of resources. But one thing that I'd like to draw to your attention, you may not have noticed this, but I saw, and it was quite interesting, is that the Bank of Guyana report indicated that we've seen public employment fall by 10.9%. Public employment. So there's 11% really fewer public workers, public service workers. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, in this period of cost of living hell, you mean to tell me they've fired 1 in every 10 public servants or gotten rid of 1 in every 10 public servants? That's the first thing. The second thing I find interesting is, you'll recall a little while ago, there was this $40,000 job, a temporary job program. And the idea was that it was going to be a kind of a cost of living relief to help people get through the period. But I don't know if you follow this, but it seems to me to make no sense to say that you're hiring some people to assist with the cost of living crisis, while at the same time firing 11% of your workforce. That to me makes no sense, and it shows that there's no rational and structured and proper policy making going on here by the PUP, because that makes it seem like that temporary job program is just a handout to some supporters. Which,
but that is exactly what it is, Mr. Lowe. And the Bank of Guyana report article actually didn't go into the reasons behind the unemployment, especially the jobs being dropped in the public service, is as a result of persons being discriminated against. You've alluded to that, persons being fired. We know in the beginning of this install regime, they sent home over 3,000 public servants, sent them home. So that has a tremendous impact on what that Bank of Guyana report is saying. You are correct about the 40,000 plus jobs that they're talking about, part-time jobs. We don't know what these jobs are, but they have their friends and their cronies issuing invoices worth millions upon millions of dollars every single month. In fact, on the quarantine last month or the month prior to that, the amount for part-time work that we don't even know came up to over $160-something million. But you are the guy that's advising the leader of the opposition on policies and economics and so forth. Have you guys studied the actual spending, the wasteful spending of these hundreds of millions of dollars in so-called part-time jobs?
Yeah, well, we are aware of that. We also have an estimate of the overall waste and theft that we think is going on, which is in the order of around about $90 billion this year. So it's a huge amount, and we anticipate that they'll continue to waste or steal that much. That's unfortunately the quality of governance in Guyana. That is the scale of the problem. But one of the things that I think is also fascinating, because this question of employment is an interesting one, and I think you kind of mentioned this a bit. There's also the question of GuySuCo and its poor performance, and whether or not the government is properly managing that industry. And one of the things that I find to be pretty fascinating is that it also was indicated that GuySuCo had increased employment by nearly 8%. So GuySuCo has actually seen a fall in its sugar production, 56% below its target for the year. So we've seen a fall in its production, far below its target, but it's seeing an increase in staff, which means that per person we're seeing less sugar produced than ever before per person at GuySuCo. It's far more inefficient than it has ever been. That's what's going on. So on the one hand, you have them hiring folks at GuySuCo, and on the other hand, you have them dismissing people from the public service. And of course, people in the public service We'll be doing things that add meaningful value to the economy. Whereas in GuySuCo, of course, that is a detractor from the economy where we always have to keep propping it up. That's one key area. But of course, what we really want to ensure that we help those who work with GuySuCo to understand is that we do not see the situation as being sustainable. We see that this is going to be a difficult industry, and we see that we need to find, and we've identified areas, and we'll continue to provide plans for GuySuCo workers to get better paying jobs in other sectors of the economy. We're not saying that we need to stop producing sugar or anything like that. What we're saying is that GuySuCo workers need to be given opportunities to earn more in different sectors of the economy where there are tremendous needs for jobs. That is the way that we should operate. It is efficient. It will allow us to stop having to send these monstrous subventions, billions and billions every single year to GuySuCo, and at the same time allow the economy to move forward. So that's what we want to see. But what we're seeing currently is the opposite of what you're supposed to see. That is to say, a huge drop in the production of sugar and an increase in the employment. What is going on? That is to me the opposite of
It
what
is
should be
pretty
happening.
obvious, Mr. Lowe. Isn't it pretty obvious what is going on? They're thieving the money. Look, I was going to ask you that since you brought up GuySuCo and of course the corruption, high level of corruption, billions of dollars being stifled. So they believe that if the increase of this, God in heaven knows if they're pretending that it has increased or they have inflated that so that they can continue to steal more. We have heard for 2 or 3 mornings, as is the case with a lot of things in Guyana. 3 mornings we've heard about this controversy over tractor and who should buy it and millions of dollars. What happened? Has it died like the sugar industry too? Done with, sir?
Well,
What's
that's the
happening?
thing. That's the thing. I think what has gone on is you've heard the PvP make lots of comments. So we got to do something about GuySuCo. GuySuCo's got to be fixed. We got to work on GuySuCo. What actions have been taken? What actual actions have been taken other than talking about GuySuCo? That's the first thing. The second thing is, given these strong allegations, some members of the GuySuCo board appear to have made allegations of corruption and so on, which of course we don't know, but should be investigated to find out the truth. What has come of that? Has anything come of that? No. And so GuySuCo is in its darkest hour, its darkest period, and I think that the workers there have every right to feel very job insecure because they don't know what's going to happen. Now, while one of the things I always find to be interesting is that former President Ramatar, so by no means a coalition person, expressed a certain degree of skepticism about the PvP's efforts to revive GuySuCo. He was not impressed with them from the get-go. And I think that he has proved to be very much aware or to have a good insight as to he's predicted the decline because he was not confident in these efforts at all to revive this industry, to reopen estates, whatnot, estates which haven't even really been reopened at this stage. And so I think that demonstrates to you that the PvP is not serious about doing anything about GuySuCo that will benefit the workers. It's just they're just trying to hold on as long as they can to those votes without actually expending the appropriate effort, resources, and focus to move the lives of those workers forward. Now, sugar is one thing. I'm not saying we're not going to produce sugar. What I am saying is we need to move many of these workers into higher earning jobs, whether that's in the oil and gas industry or related industries or other industries that come up. That's what we need to do. There are many skills that GuySuCo workers have that can translate easily into shower bases and the like and so on, where they can get good pay. There are many such skills. That is obviously the way to go. We've heard as well that the Guyanese economy needs 150,000 jobs over as the oil and gas economy develops. But it seems to me to be deeply ironic that you can have so many thousands of workers at GuySuCo. So many thousands of workers at GuySuCo. And rather than retraining them and getting them employed in other sectors where there is a tremendous need, what you're doing is just stringing them along with these with a low salary and without a productive use of their time. It's absurd to me. And I have previously indicated that I believe GuySuCo should just be renamed the Guyana Oil and Gas Training Center, because I think we gotta get this maybe on a psychological level. We gotta understand that sugar is not the only thing that you can do, even as much as we want to produce sugar, but we have to produce it in an efficient manner.
And that is exactly what the coalition was doing. The coalition has outlined that in terms of alternative employment for the sugar workers. And I do believe that those in the opposition, they had a vision. President Granger had a vision for that. It's sad that that vision has been lost under the installed PPP regime. They have no vision. They have no interest in seeing betterment at GuySuCo because it is served as a milking cow, a fat cat for them, where they go and they steal billions and billions of dollars. Again, I make mention of the tractor situation, the tractor gate situation. That is done with. It's over with. And the thing that is so ironic is I heard recently that the PPP now are talking about alternative jobs, not for GuySuCo workers, but for fishermen. They're telling the fishermen, I see you're smiling. Take a shot at that, sir.
No, well, what I find to be interesting about this is we have had a discussion in the media. There's been conversations around the question of Dutch disease. Now, Dutch disease has its strict definition. Your viewers may not be interested in that. But the real concern when people talk about Dutch disease is the idea that you focus on your one big natural resource or one big area of the economy, and you neglect or you allow other areas of the economy to decline and to eventually cease to operate. One of the most classic examples is in Venezuela, where they stopped producing food and they started importing all the food from Mexico and these types of things. Now, the issue is if we see a decline in fish production, you say that we're just going to abandon the fish industry altogether. Is that what's going to happen? And on top of that, one of the real concerns is that the fishermen have not been able to access their traditional fishing grounds because the Exxon ships are there and they're prospecting and so on. And so that is a real concern for that industry. But one thing that I'll point out, which
it's actually a big hindrance. The PPP regime know that, but they are lying to the fishermen and women. They are lying to those people. The fishing industry, like the sugar industry, is dead. Well, not so much the fishing industry, but you talk to fishermen out on the quarantine or fisherwomen out in the quarantine especially, and they will tell you the reality that actually happened there, that's happening on the ground. The sugar, forget about sugar, it has died. But the fishing industry is dying. Why do you suppose that Jack Dale and others, they rushed up there a couple of days ago to give the fishermen them little couple dollars and little crumbs and so forth? Because they basically heard they were going to have a big protest on the quarantine to shut the entire quarantine down. But go ahead, Mr. Lowe.
Well, it's a very serious issue, and I think the other element of it is that there's a question of whether they could have gotten fishing licenses for Suriname to fish in those waters, and they haven't been able to get that, which I think is a failure of diplomacy by the state. I think they've really done a poor job.
If you notice, when President Santoki of Suriname was in Guyana, they shook hands, and Irfan gave the people of Guyana the impression that they have such a lovely relationship. But Santoki just dig it in them, so to speak, and is not giving them. Sorry, I dig it in them. At QC, you guys would have learned that term. We're going to touch on QC shortly, but
it's a technical term.
Dig it in them.
I mean, the thing is, there were warnings from the beginning that because we've had historical tensions with Suriname, you cannot just trust them at their word like that, but rather you need to work to establish a more concrete mechanism to ensure that this actually gets done. But those warnings were not heeded, and now they look, in my opinion, the government looks very foolish.
Look very dotish, as they are looking dotish in a lot of other areas. And the president of Suriname, Santoki, is no fool. And Jack Dale, and Irfan and all these guys feel that because of the ethnicity of President Santoki, they feel they could play up to that, and whatever it is that they want, they would get from the president of Suriname, Santoki, because the woman he later married after he became president happens to be Guyanese. So they think that this is all cozy, this is all lovely, this is all nice, and it looks good for them from an optic standpoint. That's why they were pushing for Bessusar out there in Trinidad and Tobago to be the prime minister there, but it didn't work. They were looking for that trifecta, but they ended up with an exacta, and the exacta just doesn't work for them. We want to move on to some. Was there another point you were going to make, sir, about the sugar and the Suriname relationship with Guyana?
Well, one thing that I want to point out is there's money in the budget for aquaculture. There's monies that have been set aside to develop aquaculture. Now, it would seem to me that rather than just handing out cash grants, the government should really have migrated fishermen to the aquaculture industries, whether through giving them lands, loans, and so on and so forth. But I think that this is just a perfect example of the type of needless, random levels of incompetence that you see in the government, rather than actually address the problem in the way that it should be addressed, which is to say, with providing these fishermen with what they need to migrate into a more modern version of the industry. What they're doing is just giving out a little cash grant here and there. This is a very classic, the very classic mismanagement that you see by PVP. And if they have assessed that it is a large scale problem, then they need to address it in a large scale fashion. Just giving a small cash grant to someone whose industry is dead, that is obviously not a solution. I mean, if you give somebody a couple dollars today, they have to buy things. A couple dollars will be done shortly. And I think it is transparent, and I think the fishermen must know that there's no future here. What kind quality of policy making is that? But that is what you're seeing across the board when it comes to the PVP's policy making. We even saw them give $250,000 to GuySuCo workers, and there wasn't really any explanation for why they had given those workers that.
Well, the only explanation, Mr. Lowe, is corruption, because the more cash grant they give out to their support base, mainly, it's corruption. Look at what they did to Monrepo. Rush in and give Auntie was selling Polari hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rush out, give the sugar workers $250,000. Rush out, give the fishermen them a couple dollars. Rush out, cash grant for the flood and COVID and all these things. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Look at what you've mentioned earlier, the 40,000 part-time jobs they're talking about. Part-time jobs, God in heaven knows where these jobs are. But like I've indicated earlier, and it is pretty obvious, they're giving these jobs. In fact, the jobs, most of those jobs do not exist, but their cronies, their friends who own businesses would submit big invoices. As the financial advisor or the advisor on economics to the leader of the opposition, I hope you guys call for a massive investigations, and that you guys can see the books as to how this money is being spent on these so-called 40,000 jobs, sir. But before we move, get away from that for a moment, let me welcome all of our listeners again. We switched topic now. I noticed Leon Trim, my good friend, who was a former acting or former crime chief. I'm not sure at that time, Mr. Lowe, you were probably still deciding which high school you wanted to go to. But the high school you ended up, which is Queens College, we'll touch on that shortly. But here's what Mr. Trim is doing. And here's why I tell you I like Mr. Trim, even though he is partially responsible for my 5 years of incarceration at Camp Street. I'm still grown enough and mature enough and to even say hello to Mr. Trim. I hold no animosity over lots of people. It doesn't mean that I have forgiven quite a few of them. I have not. But Mr. Trim is one that I have since forgiven, because he was just basically doing what Massa asked him to do. And I recall in court in 2002, my lawyers asked Mr. Trim, what can you say the advice of the DPP was as it pertains to my treason charge? What was the advice? Mr. Trim stood in court to say that he can't tell the court what that advice was. Just imagine, Mr. Lowe, a crime chief standing in court, saying to the magistrate that he cannot say what the advice was. The advice was obviously not to charge. But Mr. Trim showed up to carried out what Massa, and I know it's Massa who told him. That's why I felt sorry for Mr. Trim. Anyways, Mr. Trim is back on the show. Let's welcome him. Nice guy, apart from his little, legal act in terms of instituting that treason charge against me, knowing it to be fake. But Mr. Trim, good evening, man. Mr. Trim is saying here, and it's good to see these guys on this show, and not about human rights issues, not about things affecting the country, but Mr. Trim, I welcome your comment, though, sir. Don't get me wrong. I'm not attacking you. When I meet you, we got to probably, not Bamba Mali, though. We'll knock a beer together, and you'll tell me more of what they actually instructed you to do back then when you were the acting crime chief. Mr. Trim says here, Mark, I understand in June this year, 2020, the name of Turkey was changed to Turkey. And it is pronounced by the Turks. The said way it was pronounced by, well, he called Irfan that title. I don't call Ali that. But Mr. Trim, fair enough. I want to hear. There are lots of other human rights issues, but let us get to what Mr. Trim is saying here. Let us get to this quick video. But here's where I disagree somewhat with Mr. Trim, is the pronunciation. We know that Irfan Ali is an airhead, right? And we understand you coming out to attempt to correct and to say that this is what Irfan said and it's actually accurate and so forth. But talk about the human rights violations, talk about extrajudicial killings, talk about the police killings and so forth. Just like Paul Slow talking out and talking out against human rights violations, and not only Paul Slow, they have another senior cop, with him as well. Come out and talk about those things, you know. But anyways, let's go. Mr. Lowe here.
We are looking at how to pronounce these names, as well as how to say more interesting but often confusing country names that many mispronounce. So make sure to stay tuned to the channel. So how do you say Turkey, the name of the country, in Turkish? This is how it is spelled. Türkiye. Türkiye is how you say Turkey in Turkish.
Turkey, right? Turkey. I hope you guys are getting, because this seemed to be a big issue, Turkey. And that is not exactly how the new Turkey of Guyana has pronounced it. That is not, there's a difference, a big difference, Mr. Trim, a big difference, sir. Nevertheless, I can't, just got to say welcome. At least you made a comment about something. And at least you made a comment about something, and I appreciate that. I really do. From the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate that. Turkey, yeah. It's a big issue right now. For Mr. Trim, what's going on, man? I'll talk with you later. I need some information. You got to tell me what really happened. But Elson Lowe, when he said that you were probably deciding on which high school to go to, probably preparing to write common entrance, I don't know. But then again, no. In 2002, I think you're probably a little older than my son Ryan. And let me do the math here, because those of us in the opposition, I like to think that I'm in the opposition to this corrupt installed regime. In 2002, you would have been maybe just in primary school, maybe, as we say back in the old days, standard 3, right? 2 classes below common entrance class. But you don't have to tell them. We know your age. So you went on to Queen's College. You did well. You were one of the prefects there, and you pulled me up a couple of times, especially you're a big boy. You got on your black pants. You're a prefect. You said, Mr. Benschop, you're late with Brian or something. I don't know. I still remember that that stuff. You might not remember.
I was way back when. Yeah. I was head prefect way back then.
Yeah, it is. You went off to Queen's College, and you did well, of course, like almost most of the other students who attended Queen's College, except the guy who pronounced Kenya as Kenya. Very diverse school, like maybe most other schools in Guyana. Here's this student, the old student of QC, Queen's College Old Student Association or whatever. I want you to take a look at this ad, sir, and tell us exactly how do you feel about what you're seeing. Here goes.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 178 years of history.
178 years of excellence.
178 years of tradition.
178 years of producing Guyana's and the world's finest leaders in all areas.
We are part of that history.
And now, you are too.
So seize opportunities.
Stand out and take advantage of all that Queen's College has to offer.
The Queen's College Old Students Association will be there to support you
every step of the way. Fidels UBQTOs.
Welcome to Queen's College.
You went to Queen's College. Of course, my son attended Queen's College. I know a lot of other relatives and friends who attended Queen's College, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners and viewers, they have kids, or they themselves may have attended Queen's College. Does that reflect what Queen's College is?
Well, obviously, it is not the most, it is not a diverse video at all. It does not reflect the student body. You may know that I have sometimes a bit of a dark sense of humor, and I have to say that the part where they put all 6 of the individuals there, and none of them is anyone of African descent. I thought that was sadly hilarious, because it really highlighted not only the fact that there was a lack of diversity in the video, but that they themselves, the QCO Student Association, did not recognize, which is very obvious, that there was a lack of diversity in the video. And to make it worse, to make it even, I think, even more ironic, it's a welcome video. And if you're having a welcome video and you don't include a diverse mix, a representative mix, then maybe some people will not feel welcome. Ah, man, I thought that was very poor.
It was poorly done, poorly executed by individuals who claim to be leaders, and they attended Queen's College, and this is what we're presenting. Aren't they conscious as to how, in my opinion, how silly, how dotish, and I would even stretch it as far to say how racist that video is. Let's play it once again, Mr. Lowe, please.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 178 years of history.
178 years of excellence.
178 years of tradition.
178 years of producing Guyana's and the world's finest leaders in all areas.
We are part of that history.
And now, you are too.
So seize opportunities.
Stand out and take advantage of all the Queen's College has to offer.
The Queen's College All Students Association will be there to support you
every step of the way.
Fidels Ubiquitiles.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Mr. Lowe, how sad. I'm looking at a lot of the comments there. It's what are you doing as a former student of Queen's College? I've seen a lot of comments from old students of Queen's College, because, you know, I have attended Queen's College for 5 years. Many people wouldn't know that, but and I oftentimes remind people that I attended Queen's College for 5 years, because during those 5 years I had to drop Ryan to Queen's College. So it's like I'm an old school boy too of Queen's College, but I went to the other Queen's College up the street, Camp Street, 212 Queen's College. What are you guys, sir? What are you guys doing to correct this and to stop that?
The moment that I saw that video this evening, it was sent to me. I posted. I immediately made a comment to say that this is not acceptable, and the Queen's College Old Students Association needs to remedy this immediately. We don't need in this country to be dealing with these types of things. This is an error that should not have happened, and will only exacerbate the tensions that already exist in the society. And I mean, really, Queen's College, one of the things that I've always loved about it is that it is a very diverse school, and it demonstrates that people from all backgrounds, even in all different income backgrounds as well, can succeed. And so to see a video where 6 people are there, it's not even 1 or 2 people, it's 6 people, and you don't include a diverse mix, is disturbing.
And the thing is too, Mr. Lowe,
even if it was 1 or 2 people, it wouldn't have been enough, man.
They could have actually grabbed me, put me there in a video, just for the video, put David Hines, put even Aubrey Norton, the leader of the opposition, put some of the MPs there to make things up. But these people have no shame. Am I seeing correctly? Is the minister of one of the quote-unquote minister in that video too of social services?
Yeah, one of the ministers in the video. Yes, Ms. Vindy.
Let's play it again. We want this to sink in so people could have an understanding. And then after that video, we will move on, but we will give it the award on 107.1 FM because they deserve that award. Let's go again. This is the video. They're depicting Queen's College, and Queen's College, we know lots of different folks went to Queen's College 170-something years ago. But here it is, the PPP guys. These are all PPP guys. Let's not fool ourselves. They're all PPP guys in this video. And that explains why the video is as brutal, as heartless, and as racist as it is. It basically supports those of us who describe Guyana under the PPP regime as apartheid Guyana.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 178 years of history.
178 years of excellence.
178 years of tradition.
178 years of producing Guyana's and the world's finest leaders in all areas.
We are part of that history.
And now, you are too.
So seize opportunities.
Stand out and take advantage of all the Queen's College has to offer.
The Queen's College All Students Association will be there to support you
every step of the way.
Fidels ubiquitiles.
Welcome to Queen's College.
That's very sad. Very, very sad. And in fact, you guys who represent the... Sorry, Mr. Lowe. Go ahead. You're making a point.
It gets worse the more that you look at it. It gets worse the more that you look at it.
And that is why I played it again.
100 and something years of tradition. That's not the Queen's College tradition. It just gets worse and worse the more that you look at it.
I saw your post on it, and I must commend you because we need to see more of that. Under their page, the Old School or Old Student Association, I saw a lot of comments and people are offended.
Yeah.
And all people who attended Queen's College or who didn't attend Queen's College, you don't have to be a Queen's College past student or present student to be offended. As a Guyanese, I'm offended by that. And something has to be done. That video needs to be pulled. And you tell me if it is pulled by tomorrow. If not, you guys have to up the ante against them and do something for that video to be pulled. But for that, and for those who are part of the video that see nothing wrong with it, and those who produce that video, we have a video for them because this is what they are and this is what the video represents. We'll be right back after we give them that award.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 178 years of history.
178 years of excellence.
178 years of tradition.
178 years of producing Guyana's and the world's finest leaders in all areas.
We are part of that history.
And now, you are too.
So seize opportunities.
Stand out and take advantage of all the Queen's College has to offer.
The Queen's College All Students Association will be there to support you
every step of the way.
Fidels ubiquitiles.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 170.
All right, it is what it is. We see it, and a bunch of, I don't know what to say about these people. They are totally, I wouldn't say even oblivious as to what's happening and how it is damaging to race relations in Guyana. And it is shameful that you have somebody who has been installed as the president of Guyana and is not doing anything to basically build on race relations that we know and social cohesion that started under the coalition government. This is a shame and a disgrace, to say the least. But as we look at time, let us touch on a recent meeting that you guys in the opposition had with members of the Private Sector Commission. And let us just say before we begin this here, those bottles of water actually look very, very amateurish. I don't know who set those bottles of water there, but it is what it is. But Private Sector Commission, and I saw you drinking from the bottle too, right? But the Private Sector Commission is a PPP entity, and they have no shame about that. In fact, they have been rescued by the installed PPP regime with taxpayers' money of hundreds of millions of dollars during the COVID-19 period. Hundreds of millions of dollars in concessions they have been granted. And it's a shame that they suddenly now want to walk around to pretend as though they are concerned about meeting with opposition elements. They have met with you guys. But before we get into that, let me say why off the bat that I'm not in favor of that meeting. And that meeting should have only taken place after the head of the Public Service Commission would have apologized to the opposition and to hundreds of thousands of people who support the opposition. Yet you guys sat with this individual, and this is what he said. This is the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, Paul Chung. Paul Chung said, the PNC cabal, when will you guys come clean to this nation? Fraud is fraud. And this is a guy who has taken a decision to condemn the opposition party, the coalition, and to talk about fraud is fraud. And without any evidence, it has not been adjudicated by any court. In fact, the 2 elections petitions are lingering in the courts as a result of the PPPC's reluctance to have those petitions be heard for obvious reasons. And then you have Paul Chung talking about corruption and painting the opposition as a corrupt entity, as riggers and so forth. This is the same Paul Chung who refused to have a proper, I think we haven't heard much, about a proper investigations of hundreds of millions of dollars at GuySuCo, where he is the chairman for Guy Oil. Again, Guy Oil, hundreds of millions of dollars. But yet you guys sat there with an individual who basically is unapologetic. How does it feel with you guys sitting there with a hypocrite and giving him an audience, sir?
I think that the Private Sector Commission, and I think they would acknowledge this themselves, has a lot more to do and a long way to go in terms of, I think, getting Guyanese more broadly to see them and to really feel confident that they're a civil society organization in the way that private sector organizations really should be across the world. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done for them to be, I think, regarded that way across the society. And I think they'll acknowledge that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. What I will say, though, is that the engagement, at least some elements of it, were useful from my background or my perspective as an economic advisor. Because some of these...
But if I stop you to ask, what exactly are those elements that you found to be useful from an economic background coming from these individuals in the Private Sector Commission who are only concerned about themselves? Those things that you may have gathered from them was not solely, you're solely dependent on them for that. It is out there almost on a daily basis. And here it is, you guys are in the opposition there. You were there with the leader of the opposition. It is you guys who have to decide who you want to meet with or not a Mark Benschop. But I'm objecting to this meeting because of those vagabonds who are part of the Private Sector Commission, those PPP vagabonds, including the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, who have insulted hundreds of thousands of people who support the opposition, and yet you guys are so comfortable meeting and sitting and gaffing and drinking bottles of water. Let
me put it this way. Put it this way. As I've said, I think that they themselves would acknowledge they have a long way to go before Guyanese consider them to be the civil society, even-handed organization that private sector committees are supposed to be. However, on the other end of it, there was
one second before we go to the other end of it, because you want to take me to the other end. I'm not ready to go to the other end. Let's stick at this end.
Well, you asked what information.
One second, Mr. Lowe. One second. What did you guys say to the Private Sector Commission, especially the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, as it pertains to their obvious bias in terms of how they see things and how they are more pro PPP? Did you guys address the situation where Mr. Chung actually called you guys in the opposition riggers?
So what was addressed, and I think it is something that some great deal of thought was given to, is the question of the Private Sector Commission not speaking out on issues that it should speak out on, not speaking out in a way that some would think to be even-handed, and not, I think, providing narratives that are independent of the government. Those are serious issues that we raised. We raised with them their responsibility as a civil society organization and ways in which they need to continue to work or to work harder to improve their performance, because ultimately they have to serve the interests of various businesses. And if they don't speak out on matters, or they only speak out in ways that are directly tied to a government narrative, or they don't air their grievances and concerns when those things need to be aired, then they're not fulfilling their mandate the way that they should be. And so we had very frank discussions about areas that they needed to be changed. And we will see, of course. I can only say that discussions were had. We will see whether there is any change in the approach. We will see whether there's an even-handed, like I said, there's work to be done to ensure that Guyanese across the board perceive them in a way that is even-handed. So a lot of work to be done. So that is, I think,
lots and lots of work to be done. Most Guyanese do not consider them to be even-handed. They're flat-foot hustlers. They're blood suckers. And they are basically work as they're a bunch of welfare recipients receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in concessions, COVID, concession and all manner of things. So they're a waste of time, and you guys would have wasted, in my opinion, your time, whether it's 1 hour or 2 hours sitting talking to those. Maybe the leader of the opposition and you guys would have. It would have been far more worthy of your time spent with finally, or at least getting a chance to meet with the trade unions.
Well, listen, one thing that I think I've not been able to clarify yet is this. While there are different elements to that's such an engagement, and some elements may not be looked on favorably, I do have to say that I was able to gather technical information from them, which I found to be useful from an economic and a business standpoint.
I respect that, Mr. Lowe. I respect that.
In that environment, I'm not just going there to sit. I'm going to try and assess what are some of the issues, what are some of the needs, what actually is the truth, what is not the truth, what makes sense, what does not make sense. And so from that,
I got you.
It's useful in that.
And I got you, and I respect that. But I tell you what, you don't have to sit with them to assess them. We have already assessed them, what they're about. I showed you what the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, Chong, said about the opposition. He needs to apologize before any meeting takes place. Look at the level of corruption, not just perception of corruption at Guy Oil, of which he's the chairman of the board. Let him address those things. Let him address other.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't address those things. Yeah. What I'm saying is that there are other things which I think are to the benefit of Guyana, which is information that we're able to receive. And you may think that the meeting only covered
look, we walk separate ways.
I think there were probably 20 separate economic issues that were covered.
Not from the Private Sector Commission. Oh man, you could go at Stabroek Market and get that. You could go at Border Market and get that.
There are different perspectives from different parts of the economy, and we have to get a sense of certain things. Now, that is to say, one element of the meeting. I know that there's other elements where
I got you, but you got to be careful with the other element that you lean on. It's a massive allegations, level of corruptions and favoritism, and they feel as though they deserve concessions and these things. So I wouldn't even lean on them. If I were an economist, I wouldn't even bother with them. I'd prefer to go maybe around Camp Street or Lusignan prison and talk about the economy. With
one must assess what is the truth and what is not the truth. And so I don't want you to think that I was not engaging in such an assessment at the time.
Got you, but let them don't allow them to contaminate your mind, Mr. Lowe. They're a bunch of vampires. That's who they are. They need to apologize to those of us who supported, those of us who voted for the party that actually won the elections. They need to apologize to us. And Lowe needs to do something about it. Not Lowe, sorry. Chung. Lowe, Chung. I'm getting very low with you. Sorry about that, Mr. Lowe. But what else do you want to talk before we go? Let me see. I'm not saying that there should not be engagement, Mr. Lowe. I'm not saying that at all. But there are certain things that come before engagement. And I find it difficult to sit with somebody who calls the entire bunch of opposition riggers and then look at them for some sort of element of support or what is happening in the economy. We know what is happening in the economy. They're blood suckers. And I hope you were able to get that from that meeting when you guys met with them, that they are indeed a bunch of blood suckers, shameless blood suckers. Let's let's move on. What is your take on this here? Soldiers cleaning the streets.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think has come out of this issue is the question of whether the appropriate local government arms are being funded to carry out the actual activities that they're supposed to be carrying out, like ensuring that the area is clean and well maintained and so on, or whether that funding has not been provided and the army is being deputized to provide that function, which is not the army's function. And so that is, I think, something that is concerning. And it is also a question, we've also raised the question as to whether the local government organs across this country are being allowed to carry out their mandate. First of all, not getting access to the resources that they're supposed to get access to. And second of all, being pressured and therefore not allowed to carry out their mandate in an independent manner. And so this, I think, is a symptom of a broader issue where when it comes to the administration of local government. You'll observe, or you'll probably recall that for the longest while you didn't get local government elections under the PUP. And that to me gives you a sense of their approach or their belief when it comes to governance at that level and when it comes to accountability at that level.
All right, well said. Soldiers are hitting the streets, cleaning the streets, and this, we can tell where this is coming from. That this is probably something that where some of those vagabonds in the private sector commission sat with those vagabonds in the install regime, and they talk about, hey, I have feed them, you know what? I have feed them every day. Them I eat, man. I put them out, let them walk. Right? That's the thinking of these racists in the PPP. I put them, let them walk, man. Put them, let them walk. Carry them, let them clean the streets. But they're not going to do this to sugar workers and say, I go clean the streets and we'll give you all a stipend. They're not going to do that. Look at what they have done to these soldiers. Look at what they have done to them. Clean the streets, the clean gutters. You know what? These things should have been done to persons who have short sentences. You know, you sentence a little 3 months, send them to do community service work, let them clean the streets, clean gutter. You reduce their sentences and you send them home. But I don't want to see our soldiers like this at all. It is not to say that there aren't some type of work that a soldier wouldn't be doing in terms of development of our country, but not to clean the streets. I would prefer to see Irfan Ali sweeping the streets right now, or Jack Dale cleaning the streets, or those members of parliament in the PPP side of the bench. Clean the streets. Send them to clean the streets. And, you know, it will be fair enough for me to add that there might very well be some lazy members in the opposition MP bench who should be cleaning the streets as well. Put the parliamentarians to clean the streets. I don't know, man. What else we can talk about? I noticed your face change when I said put some of them in the opposition too, the opposition bench. Some of them, not all of them. Put them to clean the streets too. I don't know. In closing, please, sir, I see you're smiling. You're such a diplomat. Probably took after your cousin, Bartholomew Reed. In closing, Mr. Lowe, you know, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
It's always good to be on. It's always good to be on.
Do you see a bright future? You got to come on good shows, you know, where you get a good level of audience, mature audience, fair audience, and the truth be told. You got to, don't contaminate yourself by going on propaganda shows that are being supported financially by questionable characters, because come elections time, they're going to chew y'all up, buddy. I'm telling you, they're going to chew y'all up. Be mindful of those shows y'all appeared, because I don't know, some things I want to say, but I'll say it when you're off with me. But I'll give you that opportunity for your closing remarks, sir.
Well, one thing that I want to draw attention to is that we have called for the University of Guyana to be free immediately. We have also indicated that we, when in office, will write off all student loans, all student debts, and those residing in Guyana who paid in cash will be compensated accordingly. Now, we've seen even at the University of Guyana, students now complaining about having to pay facilities fees, being uncertain whether or not they'll be on campus and these sorts of things. And we've seen again the government make no effort to move the University of Guyana to being a free institution. Even gradual efforts, such as saying from now on there will be no facilities fees, we will reduce gradually the tuition at the University of Guyana. Of course, I had made some of these proposals all the way back when I was fighting for the University of Guyana to be free pre-2020. Now, those measures, that approach has not been implemented, and you've seen years go by and the PPP not move a single toe towards making the University of Guyana free. This is not acceptable. But the reason that we've gone further and said that what we need to do is to write off student debts is because we want people to understand that from now, we're going to ensure that you don't have to pay, so that when we're in office, you will not have to deal with this real injustice. You'll be compensated accordingly. So even if they don't make it free now, it will effectively be free. That is what we're doing. And I want to tie this now back into the cost of living debate. How can you make a promise, oh, we're going to make the University of Guyana free, we're going to make it free, make no efforts or actions, and at the same time, you've got this big cost of living crisis, and not think to yourself, well, one good way to deal with the cost of living crisis is to make the University of Guyana free, to reduce the tuition, and so on. Of course, you'll observe that in the US, they have pushed back payments on student loans and things like that to help to provide cost of living relief. We have not seen those efforts here in Guyana. We've seen almost no movement on the University of Guyana issue, and I want to bring it to your viewers' attention, because we should not be allowing the PPP to sleep on an issue that's as important as the University of Guyana, when it is also tied to the cost of living issue for so many people.
Well said, Mr. Lowe. Always refreshing. Always a pleasure to have you on board with us here. Don't be a stranger on 107.1 FM on the issue of UG fees. I do recall, and I was looking, and I did send Lemon a message for him to look up that article or that post during the course of when the coalition government was actually in office, pleaded on several occasions, even on the same radio station, that the fees, because they have a lot of students who have attended UG, they took loans and so forth. Yep. Those fees, those loans should be wiped off and give the young people a fresh chance. For those vagabonds in the PPP who suddenly believe that they are about young people, when in fact they're not. And one of the key things too is we should remember that free education at the university level at UG there was actually snatched away from the people of Guyana by the PPP in 1992 when they took office in October 5th. And then not so long after, they discontinued free education at the university level. So for 23 years, Guyanese, young Guyanese in particular, and they've had some older folks who went back to UG, Robert Corbin, Mr. Moses Nagamoto, and so forth, older folks who went back to UG. So it's not just about the young people in general, but they have deprived a lot of people, including probably middle-aged folks like me now and these sort of things. Lots of people have been deprived. And so it's hypocritical of the PPP to now talk about what they plan to do about the free education at UG, something they robbed the Guyanese people of. And I hope you guys in the opposition will continue to highlight that when you visit the communities and so forth, that it is the PPP who took that away from the people of Guyana. And then I got a little bone of contention for those of you guys in the coalition. For 5 years, and there's nothing couldn't tell me that it wasn't something as easily snapped like that, to first of all wipe off the university fees, those kids who attended UG through loans at the banks, wipe it off, give them a fresh start in life. You alluded to what's happening here in the US with student loans and so forth. Those things could have been done in Guyana, even when the coalition was in office, legitimately when they were in office. Free education, because it is part of our constitution, and it is a violation of our constitution. It is illegal what the PPP did, and for 23 years they were allowed to do it. That should have been reinstated under the coalition government. There's nothing that stopped them from doing that. But under the PPP installed regime, we're now hearing, as what Jack Dale said, that in his voice, by 2025. Now they said when they were campaigning, It will be done immediately. Now they're saying by 2025. How do they know that they're even going to be in office by 2025 unless they have those court petitions, those elections petitions fixed through the court? I don't know, Mr. Lowe. Take another shot at your closing remarks.
I say this to you. If there's a possibility of an election in 2025, and you say you're going to make the University of Guyana free by 2025, that kind of makes it sound like you don't actually intend to make the University of Guyana free at all, doesn't it? And you're just drawing people out until the next election. I'm just going to throw that out there, see what viewers think.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're drawing it out. They're playing cheap politics. You know what they're going to do? Let us assume, because they continue to stymie the process, the hearing of the elections petitions for obvious reasons, because they know they have rigged the elections. And when you see Paul Chung next time, the so-called chairman of the Private Sector Commission and chairman of that corrupt agency, Guy Oil, you tell him that the PPP has rigged the elections, and Mark Benschop is saying that, because if they didn't rig the elections, they would want the elections petitions to be heard instead of wasting hundreds of millions of dollars to some commission of inquiry into the 2020 elections. Fraud, 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 fraud. But what I want to say to you, Mr. Lowe, is thank you so much for your time. Continue to be as brave as you are to expose these people at the financial level. And we can only, you being a young person, we can only encourage you, sir, to continue on the path that you're on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, Elson Lowe there for you guys. We could have gone on and on with that young man. It's always a pleasure to have young people's views, and he seems to be on to something. And he's getting that from us here at 107.1 FM, and not on the other side of the equation, not on the other side of the equation where they are setting opposition people up that come next elections, whenever those elections are held, that they're going to blister the opposition. But all they want to do is to make their platform popular. I'm saying to folks who are in the opposition, who rush to be on these platforms, to be careful. Be careful of the platforms that you guys support. Like the professor who made her comment about the Queen, she said the same, almost identical thing to Piers Morgan, that why should she go on his platform? Why should she be aiding and abetting in feeding the enemy, so to speak? And these opposition folks, I'm watching them, they're rushing to go on that so-called platform that is very weak, that is propagandist, a bunch of propagandists that are on that show. And those opposition people, like they're sitting and they're waiting for a phone call just to appear on that show. And this particular program, this particular radio station was all out for them during elections and after elections, when many of them ran and they hide. They were afraid to speak out. They were afraid to even say, They didn't want to. So many of them depended on us here on 107.1 FM for that. But for now, you call some of them to appear on the show, they got into hiding, their bumps raised, they get, all manner of things happening to them. But yet they sit and wait for a phone call to go on the other side, to sit down and dress up the other side. That's what they do. But I'm watching them. Those who go on that side, y'all stay on that side. Don't come back on this side. I'm being straightforward with you guys, because y'all are confused set of people. Why support your enemy? Why put food on the tables of your enemies? People who don't like you guys, people who call you guys all manner of names and things, but yet you're comfortable going on their platform. Priority all screwed up. Some of you guys in the opposition, all screwed up, kind of like a Turkey kind of thing, right? All screwed up. But again, I'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time. I want to drive off, but before I drive off, let me ask this question concerning the police force. They're rushing to investigate gold, some $400 million in gold missing since January, arrest, and they're investigating, and all manner of things. But we're not hearing them pulling these guys in for fitness and question them about the murder of Fagundos or whatever paper shards his name is. They're not pulling these guys into fitness. They're not pulling them in to say, let us question these guys and let's get over with this murder probe, this corruption that took place according to Mr. Bascom. We're not hearing anything. And the media in Guyana, just, what is it, a 1 day, 2 day kind of like pomposetting themselves, and the matter died down. It died down and that's it. We're not hearing much about it. just like we're not hearing much about Sue and Jack Dale and allegations of corruption and so forth and so on. We're not hearing much about or anything about these fishermen who are still missing. But yet Jack Dale and them jump in the fancy taxpayer-supported vehicles and vehicles that were given to some of them by drug lords and money launderers and all gold smugglers and so forth. We're not hearing about these things because these things are not important to some of the media people there in Guyana or these in the install regime. We're not hearing about the case of what's happening with these folks who have been wrongfully charged and these things. We're not hearing about them. We're not hearing about Trevor Ben. We're not hearing about those things at all. We're not even hearing about this here, but we've got to remind people here. Look at what happened. 4,000, almost 5,000 absent voters, almost 1,300 missing oaths of identity, 47 ballot boxes without documents, mainly on the lower east coast of Demerara and so forth. We're not hearing about these things. You know, sometimes I just feel like I'll just take my car and just drive off and just have you guys deal with these vagabonds in Guyana. We're just not hearing about a lot of things and the corruption, massive corruption. We're just not hearing. People, ordinary folks are being charged with cybercrime and all things, but yet the crime chief has been charged, criminal charges against him, and those folks in the DPP decided to withdraw it. We're not hearing about these things, right? We're not hearing about, well, not this lady here. This lady is accused. I'm not sure what is happening with investigations. I don't know if there's a psychiatrist that she's going to be seeing, or I don't know whether she is going to be going to jail. But if that's the case, we see the level of hypocrisy in Guyana, where the niece of a minister, and that niece worked at a government mouthpiece agency, maybe DPI or wherever, and she was caught taking cocaine, not allegedly taking. And then right away, she didn't go to jail or anything. They say they're going to order a psychiatric evaluation. Well, why can't that be for this woman too? Why? Because she's from Haslington or wherever, or because of her ethnicity, that she doesn't deserve this? But if one can have that, then all of them could have that. Every single one of the women who are accused of these sort of things can be just like the minister's niece. And psychiatric evaluation should be rendered, should be offered. But no, it is not going to be offered. That is why I don't know the circumstances of this case, and I'm not going to condemn this woman at all. Let's get back to this here now. Irfan Ali says Sue is a carpetbagger. Then who is Irfan Ali? What is Irfan Ali? Isn't Irfan Ali a carpetbagger too? Suddenly Sue is a carpetbagger. And Sue used to help them out, according to Sue. And isn't it the same Irfan Ali who called for an investigation? Whatever happened to that investigation? Now suddenly you're coming here to discredit Mr. Sue and say that Mr. Sue is a carpetbagger. Mr. Sue should sue you, because this by itself, this headline, if everything now is, what is it in Guyana? Cybercrime stuff. Everything is cybercrime. These vagabonds have no moral authority to call people or describe people as carpetbaggers. They were carpet beggars. It is politics. It is getting into politics and taxpayers' monies that actually saved them out of the beast of poverty. Had it not been for politics and going in there and behaving like the biggest welfare recipients in Guyana and the Caribbean, they would have still been where they were before, running around Guyana with mud on their feet. That's a fact. Slippers, knee, black. And you guys could understand why their knees would be black. Anyways, we got to go. We'll be back tomorrow. Same place, same time. And their knees are definitely still black. Can't take certain people out of the mud and then expect them to change. It's not going to happen at all. Hey, I love you guys. I'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time. Hopefully I'll have hopefully I'll have the detective Bascom. I want to talk to Bascom a little bit. Hopefully I'll have him tomorrow as my guest. Bascom, I'd love to have Bascom as my guest. If anybody got contact information for Mr. Bascom, Detective Sergeant Bascom, just forward that information or tell him to give me a buzz and come on the show. I need to talk to him because this story should not be allowed to die. It should not die a natural death after a couple of days. It's got to be in the news. We've got to continue having that in the news, and we will. do that right here on 107.1 FM. Anyways, if you see Irfan somewhere in Turkey, he's in Turkey, or you see Anil in Kenya, you tell them, come on, let's have a nice, oops, our operator is naughty. Naughty. This doesn't look like a skinnier version of Irfan Ali or Jagdeep. Maybe the shoes kind of fool people, but get that off of the screen. I've got to go. Naughty operator, naughty lemon. I love you guys. I will be back tomorrow, same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM. And let me remind you guys again that they're attacking. The installed PPP regime is attacking us here at 107.1 FM. But we will fight that battle. We will fight that battle. They're trying to stifle us, kick us out of commission, but we're not going to give up. We will fight that good fight against these vagabonds in the PPP, these corrupt vagabonds in the PPP. See y'all tomorrow, same place, same time on 107.1 FM. Bye-bye.
Source. Okay, well, maybe the Chinese company that did not get the agreement that they wanted here, maybe they're the ones who told you, or it could be just a fictitious thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Su Jerome?
Su? Oh, Su.
Welcome to Queen's College.
Welcome to an institution of 178 years of history.
178 years of excellence.
178 years of tradition.
178 years of producing Guyana's and the world's finest leaders in all areas.
We are part of that history.
And now, you are too.
So seize opportunities.
Stand out and take advantage.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.